All during the regular season in this segment, Strength in Numbers, I'm Butch Stearns, Kerry Byrne alongside of Cold Hard Football Facts. We've looked at one individual unit. Well, of course, we're down to the Final Four. So we're going to look at all four teams with 5 of their best numbers, your quality stats. See where they rank in the top 5. See if we can paint a picture on which team is the strongest based on your numbers. Let's start with the Ravens. So I'll throw out the myths or the things that people think about teams, and let's see if the numbers back it up. The Ravens, of course, are all defense. Their offense is just efficient enough. Joe Flacco has beaten some good teams, but they're not good enough to win a championship with that offense compared to that defense. Let's see what the numbers say and back it up.
Well, you know, the one thing to look at, the best pass defense in football, we talked about that earlier in defensive passer rating, but even as bad as Joe Flacco's played, look at that passer rating differential. They're still in the top 8, so Joe Flacco's not put up good numbers, but they're still week in and week out winning, winning the battle of the passing lanes over the NFL battlefields, if you will. Quality stats, power rankings, this is key right now. Number 2, the last 2 years, the number 1 team in that indicator won the Super Bowl. This year, Houston was number 1, believe it or not. Then, of course, their quarterback went out. They became a different team. Baltimore beat them. So that's a very good sign for Baltimore. In the relativity index, and by the way, bendability and scorability are measures of offensive and defensive efficiency. They're pretty good. They're a pretty efficient,
well, for both of those, it says that they're pretty balanced. It paints a different picture than what people perceive.
Well, the thing is, like I said, the quarterback
when it comes to efficiency,
great, but they've been efficient. So they're not putting up big numbers, but they're not making a lot of bad mistakes. So Flacco is not a lot of people look at him and says he's not a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. Only 20 touchdown passes, but 12 games. So when you pair him with that shutdown defense, the best defense in football, you have a team that's in the position to contend, a legitimate contender for a Super Bowl title.
All right, now this is what I find interesting. When you look at the Patriots by the numbers, you paint the opposite picture. While the Ravens have the defense, the Patriots have the offense. And you would argue, like you just did, that Baltimore's offense is pretty efficient. You could easily argue from afar that the Patriots' offense is horrible, they're not efficient. But when you look at these numbers and where the Patriots rank, their defense is not as horrible as people think when it comes to the efficiency, keeping them off the scoreboard, things like that.
The key number to look at here, Butch, is our bendability index, our measure, our ability to quantify the bend but don't break phenomenon. And we have put a number to it, and we call it bendability. And the Patriots and Bill Belichick are a bendability dynasty. They're week in and week out, one of the most efficient, or year in and year out, one of the most efficient.
I'm waiting for John Facenda to do the voiceover. The bendability dynasty.
I wish I had that voice, You might be able to pull it off. But what it tells you, they give up tons of yards, and their ranking in terms of yards allowed, one of the worst in football. But their ranking in terms of points allowed is, middle of the pack, even top half of the league. So they may be giving up a lot of yards, but they're forcing a lot of turnovers. They're playing well in the red zone, and that number kind of backs out. That bendability backs it up. The key number, though, if you're a Patriots fan, the relativity index. The Patriots are the highest remaining team in football, 3rd on the relativity index. And what this does, it measures how you perform relative to the quality of your opposition. So they didn't play a lot of great teams, but they were killing the teams they played compared to how well they did against other opponents. And why this is important, this is the best predictor of victory in football. If you're better in relativity, you win about 70% of all NFL games, and the Patriots are the best remaining team in that
And the
number.
only teams that were better than them in the relativity index were the Saints and the Packers.
Saints and
they're
the Packers,
gone.
yeah, and they're both gone. Two teams almost like the Patriots had bad defenses, but those teams were not efficient defenses like the Patriots. It gives the Patriots a fighting chance. And then, of course, you have who I still think, you can say is the best quarterback in football, especially after the way the Green Bay offense imploded in such a big moment. You have to like Tom Brady against almost anybody in the NFL. If you're in a sport where quarterbacks win games and, great play quarterback wins games, you really have to like the Patriots' chances right now to win the next
So
two.
Patriots fans, football fans, if you're out there and you're a Patriots fan and people are saying, your team hasn't beat a team over 500 all year, it's a fact. It's true. But point to Cold Hard Football Facts, tell them they're 3rd in relativity index. And before we let that go on a serious note, Kerry, again, what you just said is they played the schedule that they were giving them. Yeah, they haven't beat a team that's over 500, but guess what? Compared to all the teams in the league and all the schedule they've played, relatively, they've beaten their teams better than anybody else except those 2 teams.
The Patriots were almost 10 points better than how all their opponents performed in their other games. So for the sake of argument, if the average score of a game for their opponents was 20 to 15, the Patriots are beating them by 10 points better than that. So beating them, 25 to 10. I mean, they were that much better than how the average performance did. And it's kind of explained a little bit better on the website. We can kind of get into some of the numbers, but it's all based on points. And they were beating teams pretty good, and you can look at that scoring differential, which by itself, even if you don't want to look at our quality stats, look at scoring differential. That always has a high high correlation of Super Bowl success, and right now they're the best remaining team.
All right, the Niners. The only question I had about the Niners is if Alex Smith could take the Huggies off, using Bill Parcells' old term, and he did. We'll get to Alex Smith a little bit later on, but when you look at the 5 top numbers for the Niners, it's no mistake that they're here.
Well, we've been in the 49ers camp since about week 6 and week 7 of the season. I did a story for Sports Illustrated, Butch, where I said Jim Harbaugh is the best coach in football, and this is the best coached team in football. The reason why: number 1 in bendability. We talked about the Patriots having the 2nd most efficient defense in football.
Can't score on these guys. If you do, you better keep the ball. You better earn it.
The 49ers are the number 1 most efficient defense in football. Not only that, the 2nd most efficient offense. They're the most efficient team all around. What this tells you is they're not turning the ball over. They're winning the turnover battle. They're playing good on special teams. They're playing well in the red zone on both sides of the ball.
Well coached.
They're not committing penalties. And they're playing, what we might call great situational football. They're the smartest coached team in football, and those numbers back it up. And we look what happened. They played a great, smart game, forcing turnovers, not committing penalties, making big plays, and I think we saw all that efficiency on display in the victory over the Saints.
All right, we go to the Giants, and it's interesting because the Giants have won a Super Bowl, being a team, as you just said a few years ago, that what's the word I'm looking for? Went against the numbers.
Yeah, yep.
And now it's the same thing. They're in the bottom half of your quality stats in most of them. But when we look at where they're ranked the highest, it's interesting here. Again, below the top 10 in a lot of them, and in the bottom half in some of them. So why?
This is a fascinating statistical story. If you're kind of a stat geek like I am or a football fan, those 2007 Giants, Butch, we all saw, they struggled all year. They remain the worst team ever statistically to win a Super Bowl by any major measure. They gave up 351 points on defense. They were the worst passer rating differential, one of our key stats, and among any champion in history. In number after number after number, they were not a great team. What they do, they turned it on at the end of the year and played really well, and now we're seeing the same thing. This was not a great team. This team gave 400 points. We talk about all their great players on defense, but they gave up 400 points. They were not a great defense, but what have they done? Turned it on again late in the year. It's been some magic that Tom Coughlin's had late in the season. And I think the one thing that we don't have on this list that we should talk about with the Giants, our defensive hog index. The NFL is all about great play at quarterback and then making life tough on opposing quarterbacks. They went number 2 in the NFL this year at forcing quarterbacks into negative pass plays, sacks and interceptions. Gives this team a fighting chance to win any game. And look they forced Aaron Rodgers into, that whole Green Bay offense into an uncharacteristic game in the
And my guess is, I'm not sure if you've done this, but if you took the last 6 or 7 games of the season, including these playoff games, that the Giants' numbers on defense are much higher.
Much better. I did a thing just about a month ago for NFL Network on statistical peaking. Which teams are peaking at the right time? And one of the all-time great teams peaking at the right time, the 2007 Giants. We do not run the numbers. This was done a few weeks ago. Have not run the numbers yet for the Giants. But obviously, if you ran them now, you would find the same thing. This team's on a rapid upswing. And can they keep it going? If they do, it'd be almost that 2017 was really a statistical miracle. There's no other, way to describe it. This team not quite as dramatic because Eli Manning's been so good this year, but still be remarkable for a team to come from where they are at 1.7-7, Butch. That's all you have to look at.
Yeah.
And they could win the Super Bowl. No 9-7 team has ever won the Super Bowl.